This video is for The Living Earth, Unit 3.6, Mechanisms for Evolution. Today's essential question is, how does speciation occur? The formation of a new species is called speciation. Members of the same species that reproduce sexually must be able to mate and produce fertile offspring. Mating, and thus gene flow, might stop between two parts of a population if splitting of the population occurs. Once populations could no longer reproduce with each other, speciation can occur. Speciation may occur for various reasons. A divergence based on behavioral, ecological, or genetic reasons is called sympatric speciation. This happens when two or more descendants arise from a single ancestral species, and all of them are located in the same geographical region. For example, part of a population may seek out a new food source or develop a different type of mating ritual. Over time, changes due to the different behaviors of the groups can lead to speciation. In parapatric speciation, a new species evolves due to changes in local habitats that cause non-random mating. These individuals occupying and adapting to one habitat, although physically close to each other in another habitat, are more likely to mate with one another. Over time, the genomes of the two groups diverge. Sometimes gene flow is restricted because of changes in mating habits in the population. Speciation may, therefore, occur because of the reduced gene flow between the sections of the population. Parapatric speciation is another example of how natural selection increases diversity. The most common reason for speciation is the separation of a population. Separation is most often due to geographic features, such as mountains or water. This type of speciation is termed allopatric speciation. Natural selection is the driving constant for most of the speciation that we see. However, sexual selection may also play a part.
Words read, what do you get if you cross a mouse with a mango? A fence separates a group of mice from a group of mangoes.
What do you get if you cross a mouse with a mango? Don't be ridiculous. You can't cross a mouse with a mango because they are reproductively isolated. The two species have completely separate gene pools that cannot be combined. In biology, a species is a group of individuals that can interbreed. A gene pool for a species is the set of genes in the population at any given time. Evolution is a change in the gene pool of a population over time. So when two groups are reproductively isolated, like the mouse and the mango, they have separate gene pools and are therefore considered two different species. Speciation is the process by which new species are created. There are several ways this can happen. Imagine, for example, a population of mice that can interbreed because they are all of the same species. A flood comes along, causing the landscape to change, and isolates one group of mice from the other. The two groups can no longer breed due to physical separation. Now imagine a few thousand years pass and suddenly an earthquake occurs, reuniting the two populations.
One population of mice is white, and the other has pink and green spots.
Thanks to several millennia of separation, the mice may look different or behave differently, or have other genetic changes that make interbreeding impossible. Even though they are no longer physically separated, something keeps them apart. Because the two groups are now reproductively isolated, they are considered different species.
Speciation by geographic separation is called allopatric speciation, while speciation that occurs without physical barriers is called sympatric speciation.
Different species can look quite similar. For example, South American jaguars and African leopards are both large spotted cats, but different species. Species that are physically separated for a very long time may undergo parallel evolution, which is they might evolve in very similar ways after splitting off from a common ancestor. In cases of convergent evolution, unrelated species evolve in similar ways. For example, birds, insects, and bats all fly and have wings, but they evolved from different ancestors.
Divergent evolution is what happens when a population splits off and becomes a new species. The two species, though closely related, develop new traits to better help them fit into their environments.
All of these examples are based on species that reproduce sexually. That is, two parents each contribute to the genetic makeup of the offspring. In species that reproduce asexually or without sex, including many one-celled organisms, insects, and plants, each offspring is genetically identical to its single parent. In other words, each offspring is a clone.
A bacterium replicates.
Occasional mutations can still occur when a DNA strand is damaged by a chemical reaction or even a cosmic ray. Every so often, a mutation will actually survive and the cell will reproduce, resulting in a new strain of bacteria for
Different dog breeds branch out from the words Canis familiaris.
the species is the most important way we have of grouping organisms. Below the species level are different varieties or subspecies. These different varieties all belong to the same species because they can interbreed, but have some distinguishing feature. Take poodles and German shepherds, for instance.
You could breed them together, but would you really want to?
The process of evolution can be summarized in 7 words. Genes mutate. Individuals are selected. Populations evolve.
And you'll probably never be able to cross a mouse with a mango.
Sexual selection. Some inherited traits increase an individual's chance of attracting a mate. These traits will tend to be passed on as the attractive individual reproduces more frequently. This type of selection is called sexual selection. Sexual selection often results in sexual dimorphism, or phenotypic differences between the sexes of a species. Many animals exhibit sexual dimorphism through either structural or behavioral differences. This is evident in the differences between a male peacock and a female peahen. The male has a colorful plumage that, coupled with the display, is intended to encourage the female to mate. Strangely, sexual selection may result in phenotypes that are harmful to an individual's survival. For example, long decorative tail feathers possessed by birds may attract predators and make escape flight more difficult. In such cases, the benefits of obtaining mates and breeding outweigh these additional risks of death from predation. Many scientists think that sexual selection often occurs in conjunction with natural selection, and some consider it a specific form of sympatric selection.
The question of why male peacocks have such elaborate tails plagued evolutionary biologists. What possible purpose could such ornamentation serve? How could natural selection favor a trait that might not only attract predators, but make it difficult to run away from them?
Yikes!
Would wearing a long gown and heels help you win a marathon?
Ouch!
Not likely. Charles Darwin argued that pretty tails help peacocks attract mates.
Look at me!
Isn't he cute? Hubba hubba.
So what am I, chopped liver? And that peahens prefer males with big, bright tails.
Oh my!
A peacock with a small drab tail might live longer, but he probably wouldn't be popular with the ladies.
What's wrong with me?
With no offspring to carry on the drab tail line, the genes for these traits would soon die out. But why do peahens prefer males with big, bright tails?
That's pretty desirable.
The answer? Only healthy, well-fed birds can grow big tails. No, my tail is killing me. So peahens bypass scrawny-tailed males and choose the flashy ones
Look at me!
based on the strength of their reproductive potential.
Nice.
In fact, when shown males with artificial tails bigger than the bird's natural ones,
Look at my tail.
peahens will choose the artificially enhanced males. Check it out.
Dreamy. I pick him. He's super. Hubba hubba. He's my choice.
If an organism lives to be 1,000 years old but has no offspring, it might as well not have lived at all as far as its genes are concerned. So natural selection is not just about survival, it's also about successful reproduction. Natural selection for courtship purposes is called sexual selection, and it can help attract mates and drive off rivals.
King of the jungle.
The gaudy looks and macho behavior are usually, but not always, displayed by males.
I can bench more than you.
Yeah, so what?
In species where females do the choosing, they don't need the costly adornments and weapons, saving their energy instead for bearing and raising offspring. There are many species, however,
Here I am, honey.
where the male expends as much energy or more in raising the offspring as the female does.
Off I go. Bye, honey. Not too much TV.
But in a process called runaway selection, things can get a bit bizarre. Take the example of the now extinct Irish elk. One theory was that under constant sexual selection, the elk's antlers increased in size because males were using them to attract mates and drive off the competition. The antlers eventually became so huge
Blimey, I'm stuck.
Nice antlers.
that some evolutionary biologists wonder whether the Irish elk could have lasted much longer. That is, if climate change hadn't gotten to him first.
A little help here.
In the rich variety of human culture, courtship is a far more complex affair.
Wow.
But evolutionary psychologist Jeffrey Miller had an interesting theory.
The human capacity to create and appreciate art, music, and poetry did not evolve because it provided any survival benefit, but rather because it helped our ancestors seduce their potential mates.
This idea that our artistry functions as a sexual display is controversial and awaits rigorous testing. However, it is undeniable that the capacity for culture is much more highly developed in humans than in any other species. And that's pretty desirable.
At this point, you should be able to generate a full and appropriate response to today's essential question. How does speciation occur?